Thanks to 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏 Password Manager for sponsoring today's video. More on them later. I'm 31, so my earliest memories of Pamela Anderson are from the early 2000s. Risque pictures of her and Tommy Lee kissing on the red carpet, interviews where they talk about her boobs and pretty much nothing else, tabloids about her various scandalous outfits and outings, etc. Her stints on Scary Movie and Borat, where she was basically a dumb bimbo with giant boobs. That was the shtick. I actually just rewatched the opening scene for Scary Movie 3, which came out in 2003, and I know I definitely watched it at some point in the early 2000s, and wow, it is, it's bad. You guys, it is really bad. You can watch the intro on YouTube if you want. It's pretty shocking, I guess. Like, by 2003, when that movie came out, Pam Anderson was a human being that was reduced to a boob joke, period. There was nothing more to her. And yes, you can argue in some ways Pam played into that. She agreed to do these roles. She read the script beforehand and was like, yes, I will be the dumb blonde who dies in the opening scene of Scary Movie 3. But the reality is so much more complicated than that. Pamela Anderson has been front and center again in the last year because of the Hulu show Pam and Tommy, which dropped a year ago and had big names in it like Lily James, Seth Rogen, and Nick Offerman, and did really well for itself. It was also created without Pam Anderson's consent, about a time when a sex tape was leaked in the 90s without her consent. Do you see how this is royally fucked up? And this got me wondering how this legally was even possible, how no one has ever faced consequences for twice using Pam Anderson's story and body without her consent. And generally the idea that we as a society hold on to so strongly that once a dumb blonde over-sexualized bimbo, always a dumb blonde over-sexualized bimbo. And our fucked up understanding of consent. She has big boobs and shows them off. Therefore, everything that happened to her is deserved. I recently watched the new documentary, the one that she made, that she consented to, called Pamela on Netflix, and it did shed some light on the role that she has played in all of this throughout her career, plus her interpretation of what she did or did not consent to, and how this affected a person who is a full and complex human being, not the 2D cartoon image that we flattened her into in the 90s and 2000s. So let's talk about it. First, roll a damn intro. Thank you to my partner on today's video, 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏 Password Manager. Talk about lack of consent. Getting your password stolen or leaked onto the dark web can be an absolute nightmare. And I don't know about you, but I am always getting the too weak or not strong enough notification when I put in new passwords when I sign up for websites. Like, okay, buddy, you try remembering 87 different passwords. So then of course you use the same password for everything, and then that gets leaked onto the dark web, and then you're screwed, not me. Or you write them down and then you put the passwords in a safe along with your personal tapes, and then someone working on the construction on your house comes along and steals the safe. Absolute nightmare. And frankly, not something to mess around with either. Enter 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏. Not only does 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏 store your passwords for you, it also logs you in with one click. Quick and easy, we love this! And because you're using 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏, you can pick super strong and unique passwords for each website, because you don't have to worry about remembering each new password or writing them down anywhere. And you can save even more time with 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏 when you use it to enter your credit card and address info with a single click. 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏 uses industry standard encryption for all your data, so you can be absolutely sure that your information is secure. But wait, Leeja, doesn't my browser already do this? Like, I just click remember password and it's done. Why do I need 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏? I'm so glad you asked. What happens when your browser of choice isn't working? Or you gotta log in to some other computer? Or you decide you need to change browsers? Yeah, screwed. 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏 works with all browsers. Use my link in the description down below to get 30% off 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏 Password Manager for desktop and mobile. Thanks, 𝗪𝗡𝗧𝗏. So the show Pam and Tommy is based on this 2014 Rolling Stone article, and I read the whole thing and I have some questions. Mainly about this guy Rand Gauthier, the one who allegedly stole the safe, who was played by Seth Rogen in the show. But okay, let me back up. If you don't know the story, Tommy Lee is the drummer for 𝗏𝗡𝗏 𝗏, an 80s hair metal band. Pamela Anderson got her start as a Playboy model and then was cast in Baywatch in 1992. The two met at a club in LA in 1995, and then 4 days later in Mexico, after a whirlwind romance involving a lot of drugs and alcohol, they sealed the deal and tied the knot on a beach. Tommy in board shorts, Pam in a tiny white bikini. They then move in together in a mansion in Malibu and begin renovating. and they were renovating for a long time, allegedly turning the place into an adult playground, complete with a swing above a white baby grand piano. This is where stories start to diverge, though. According to 𝗬𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗪𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 rude, demanding, and the whole crew, including Rand, was fired one day out of the blue. And when the crew came back to pick up their gear, Tommy Lee threatened them with a shotgun and told them to get off his property. A few months later, in October of 1995, Rand broke into the couple's home and stole the safe located in the couple's garage that he knew contained valuable jewelry, just to get back at them for mistreating him and not paying him. And when he cracked open that safe, he found the jewelry, but then he also found a camcorder tape, which he claims he then brought straight to his porn studio buddy to watch. You see, Rand had appeared in approximately 75 porn films under the pseudonym Austin Moore, including such titles as Big Boob Bikini Bash, Miracle on 69th Street, and Willy Wankers in the Fun Factory. When they watched what was on that tape, they knew that they had struck gold. So they made a few copies of it, destroyed the original by, according to the Rolling Stone article, and I quote, melting the casing and cutting the tape itself into hundreds of little pieces, which they dispersed in a desolate area near Six Flags Magic Mountain. Which, I don't know, it sounds a little theatrical to me. Okay? They then took the tape to a few porn studios, none of which wanted to touch it because they hadn't signed releases. Pam and Tommy had not given consent to use the tape. So it was a pretty clear lawsuit in the minds of these large porn studios, just waiting to happen. Instead, because no porn studio would take it, they manufactured copies of the tape and then sold them over the newfangled World Wide Web. Pam and Tommy didn't even realize that the safe had been stolen until January. They then issued a police report, but by that point, so many copies of the tape had been created that their efforts to get it back were fruitless. And by March 1996, the couple learned that Penthouse, a major porn magazine, had acquired a copy of the tape. So they filed a $10 million lawsuit against everyone that they thought might have a copy, including Penthouse, Rand, and a number of other people connected to him. Okay, and we'll get into that lawsuit, but first, I don't know, I was reading this Rolling Stone article and I had some, I don't know, problems with this story. Here are my issues. First of all, this was a 6 foot by 4 foot by 3 foot safe. Rand claims that he alone stole the safe and hoisted it up into his waiting truck. Really, Rand? Second of all, multiple people in this article called Rand an idiot, or something like that. And Rand also apparently has an obsession with religion and cults. The article said that he believes in a mystical connection between the number of letters in the Hebrew alphabet, bones in the human skull, and years in the solar magnetic cycle. All are 22. On the back of one hand, he has a tattoo of a Freemason symbol. He claims the group once wanted to give him a machine gun and train him as a soldier. Also, in her own documentary, just released on Netflix, Pam says that they, to this day, do not know who stole the safe. And she took issue with how Tommy was portrayed in the show Pam and Tommy as someone who threatened the construction crew and was a dick to them or threatened them with a shotgun. Though I will say it is true that at one point Tommy was arrested in real life for pointing a sawed-off shotgun at a paparazzi who had shoved a camera through the gates to spy on them in their garden. So like, it's not out of character, you know? But like, I don't know if I trust this Rand guy as an airtight source. All right, like things seem, I don't know, fabricated, hyperbolized. Okay? But either way, Rand was listed in the lawsuit brought by Pam and Tommy against Penthouse and the others that they thought might have the tapes. Specifically for Penthouse, Pam and Tommy asked the court for a temporary restraining order to bar Penthouse from publishing still images from the tape. The judge denied that, and then Penthouse published its June issue with Pam on the cover and a written description of the tape. No stills from it, but Polaroids of Pam instead from a few years before that they just had lying around, I guess. They didn't include stills of the tape because they were probably worried about lawsuits. Oh, but those Polaroids, those had also been stolen as well without Pam's consent. Great. And then in August, a judge denied Pam and Tommy's request to permanently bar Penthouse from printing anything about the sex tape. The reason for this is not because of a copyright issue. The reason is what's known as prior restraint. Prior restraint is a judicial suppression of material that would be published or broadcast on the grounds that it would be libelous or harmful. It's a judge coming in and telling the press what they can and cannot publish. We don't like that. under the First Amendment, so any prior restraint like that is severely limited. In this case, the judge found that their case did not rise to the level of allowing for prior restraint. They couldn't tell Penthouse what they could or could not publish. And even when Penthouse did publish information about the tape, the judge said it was in the public consciousness and was therefore newsworthy, which falls under the fair use exception in copyright law that allows for commentary on something that is newsworthy. Further, Penthouse argued, and the judge agreed, that the couple had forfeited their right to privacy regarding the video's content because Pam had posed nude before and the couple had openly discussed their sex life in interviews. Plus, Penthouse didn't participate in the robbery, they had just received the information from a source, so it was fair game. Under California's right to privacy, Pam and Tommy would have had to show a reasonable expectation of privacy under the circumstances. And to the judge, I guess, because they talked about sex before, then anything like this is fair game. So Pam and Tommy lost. Today, California has a revenge porn law that this would probably have pretty easily fallen under. That law says, in part, anyone who intentionally distributes images of the intimate body parts of an identifiable person, or images that depict them engaging in sexual intercourse, etc., in circumstances where they agree or understand that the images will remain private, then they distribute the images knowing they will cause serious emotional distress, is guilty of revenge porn. And this crime is a misdemeanor that comes with up to 6 months in county jail and a fine of up to $1,000. This law, of course, did not exist in 1996 to protect Pam and Tommy. Or really to protect Pam. Because Tommy, he was fine. He got Pam Anderson. It added to this bad boy image that he'd been building. He had done what millions of guys around the country only dreamed of. And now those millions of guys got to watch it. Tommy was the man. Pam? Her image, reputation, and career never recovered. She was relegated forever to be the over-sexualized dumb bimbo. And at least according to her now in her Pamela documentary on Netflix, she leaned into it because it was the only way she saw to salvage what remained of her career, because she knew that it would sell. And so she took roles like the dumb blonde in the opening scene of Scary Movie 3. And that's pretty much all we thought of her for 25 years. And then came Pam and Tommy, the Hulu show. Pam and Tommy is a show based on that Rolling Stone article I mentioned before from 2014. It's starring Lily James as a pretty uncanny Pam Anderson and Sebastian Stan as Tommy Lee, equipped with a talking penis. Well, I don't know, man. I watched the first few episodes and then I lost interest, honestly. It came out last year to much fanfare and tells the story of Pam and Tommy's whirlwind romance and the theft and distribution of the tape, and then the ensuing fallout, as told by that Rolling Stone article. And according to Pam Anderson in her documentary, not only was she not involved in the project, she also didn't approve of it and felt invaded and hurt by it, nor did she agree with how the events were depicted. Apparently, the showrunners and the star Lily James tried to reach out to her at different points throughout the show's development, but she never responded. According to showrunner 𝗣𝗥𝗢𝗥𝗧𝗏, we particularly wanted to let Pamela Anderson know that this portrayal was very much a positive thing, and that we cared a great deal about her, and wanted her to know that the show loves her. We didn't get a response, but considering what she's been through and the time that we were reaching out, that was understandable. So that was understandable, but then they made the show anyway. Like, we're with you, Pam. We love you. We're biased for you. Our sympathies lie with you. Releasing that content without your consent was abhorrent, so we're gonna release this content about you without your consent. Frankly, you're welcome, okay? And this is another instance where the law will not come to Pam's defense. You do not own the legal right to the story of your life. As long as the information about a person was obtained lawfully, others are free to make content and profit from it without seeking your consent. The showrunners in Pam and Tommy bought the rights to the story from Rolling Stone because it was based off their 2014 article, which was filled with information obtained legally. Her consent was not legally required, nor was she paid a dime. There is some legal recourse that high-profile people can take if a biopic or show is made about their lives. They can sue for defamation, though of course the show in this case is sympathetic to Pamela, so I think she'd have a hard time pointing to something specifically defamatory, and defamation must be untrue. She doesn't have a right to privacy, that's already been established, so she couldn't sue based on invasion of privacy, and she can't sue based on use of her likeness, or right of publicity as it's often called, because the statute on that in most states, including in California, is very narrow, and you can only sue for use of your likeness in advertising, like directly linked to selling goods or services. And you might think, hey, they're selling a show, they're making money off Hulu memberships, but that's not direct enough. It has to be like taking Pam Anderson's face without her consent and plastering it on a billboard selling beer or something, like directly connected connected to the promotion of the sale of goods or services. And thus, Pam is truly again without legal recourse when it comes to the retelling of her story, a story that was painful when it happened and appears to be painful to her in its retelling, despite how much the creators of the show claim to be on her side. And all of this has me thinking about consent and how our society and our laws get it so wrong. To recap, Penthouse got hold of the tape against Pamela's will after it was stolen from her. They didn't publish stills from the video, but they did publish stolen Polaroids of Pamela without her consent, along with a written description of the tape. Stolen Polaroids, which at first she said she was upset about, but then later told Movie Line in an interview, and I quote, "When I saw the first Polaroid, I was like, whoa, baby, we should frame this. In the end, who cares?" Which I guess we're taking now as a blanket consent to do this over and over and over again to her. Then we had the lawsuit over the stolen tape, which she lost under the idea that she consented to being sexualized in the past, so she didn't have the right to withhold consent now. And then you have Pam and Tommy, the show being created without her consent. What struck me in the Pamela documentary on Netflix was Pam talking about her own experience with sexual assault as a child and saying that the publishing of the tape and the reopening of the wound by the Pam and Tommy show felt like that sexual assault all over again. And herein lies the fuckery. That is our societal idea of what consent is. That when you give it, you can never revoke it. That when you give it for one thing, that it's a blanket consent for all things. That consent can't be conditioned on anything. It must be absolute. And our laws around sexual assault and privacy run into similar issues, especially when we're talking about privacy on the internet. There's a brilliant scholar named 𝗪𝗫𝗧𝗏 who's written extensively on the issue, and she points out that in other areas of the law, we are perfectly capable of taking a nuanced approach when it comes to consent. In property law, for example, we are perfectly capable of understanding the differing levels of consent when someone allows you to enter their property or to use their property, and for what purpose, and what happens when that consent is revoked or changed. We've got laws for that when it comes to property, but we seem incapable of writing laws like that when it comes to bodies, sex, and privacy, which is why the recent push by 𝗪𝗫𝗧𝗏 and attorney Kerry Goldberg and others for revenge porn laws is so important for adding nuance to our legal understanding of consent. It's the same reason why consent contracts are a horrible idea. Have you heard of these things? The idea is you have an app or something where before engaging in sexual activity, both parties have to sign their consent. On the one hand, I think the idea is trying to protect people from being assaulted, like make sure you have enthusiastic consent before you start. But that's not how consent works. You don't give it and that's it, especially in the realm of sex. It's an ongoing conversation and it can be legitimately revoked at any time. Just because you said yes when you started does not mean that you say yes to everything that comes after. But that simple black and white understanding of consent is how most of us, especially at a young age, understand how sex works, which leads to a lot of people, especially women, having sex that they don't want to be having, but feeling like they cannot say no because they've already said yes to the encounter. And that is a form of sexual trauma that I would say most women I've talked to about this subject, myself included, have experienced. And yes, it is sexual trauma. And we watch that trauma play out on the national stage over and over and over again in Pam Anderson, because she was a woman who profited from her body and who people were desperate to pay to do so, I might add. Like the Baywatch people were falling over themselves to hire her. And before that, she was plucked from a crowd and asked to pose for Playboy at 19. And because she said yes to that, then that was interpreted on a societal level, but also on a very real legal level to mean that she said yes to everything that came after that. And if you don't think that's fucked up, then I cannot help you, my friend. Pam Anderson and the many, many women who have similarly been violated deserved and continue to deserve better. Thanks again to my sponsor for today's video, RoboForm. Don't forget to check out the link in the description. Thanks to my Patreon supporters, especially my royal patrons, Old Man Pence, Fork McSpoon, Ellen L, Leeja, May Danger, Rachel, and 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And an extra special thank you to my multi-platinum patron, Brett Piontek. Your support is greatly appreciated, and it makes this channel what it is, so thank you. If you're interested in creating a YouTube channel of your own, check out my other channel, Delusion Media, or go to delusionmedia.co. We've got a ton of resources for you about growing on YouTube, including the 100K Club, where you can learn from me and collaborate with other like-minded content creators. I hope to see you in there. And if you like this video, you might also like my other video titled "Let's Talk About Critical Race Theory, Since College Board Won't." Thanks so much for watching. Have a good day. Bye-bye.